There's much to talk about mitzvahs tzitzis, but in Parshas Shelach you can't ignore the story of the Meraglim. And there's a word I share, I think, almost every year. The Meraglim were moitzi divisa oretz ra, and Klal Yisrael paid a terrible price. Bamidbar hazeh yiplu pigreichem, yoim l'shana, 40 years against 40 days. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu was geyser, a heavenly decree. You will wander in the wilderness, in the desert, for 40 years, and the entire generation will perish, and only your children will have the schus of seeing the promised land, Eretz HaKodesh, Eretz Yisrael. And many times I asked, Yoim L'Shana, did they sin 40 days? Did they transgress 40 days or 15 minutes? What was their Aveda? Their Aveda was when they came back to Moshe Rabbeinu and to Klal Yisrael, and they said negative things about Eretz Yisrael. So how long did that take? 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a half hour? So why were they punished 40 years against 40 days? And my answer is a very simple one. The Aveda was not when they spoke. It is what they were asked to do. If they would lie, that would be an Aveda. It is what they saw, and they shared their impression. The Aveda was, why did you see, and how did you see negative things about the promised land? Kadosh Baruch Hu designated. He designated it as a surah for us. And that is a promise that Kadosh Baruch Hu made to Avraham Avinu, to Yitzchak Avinu, to Yaakov Avinu, once and again and again. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to live in the land. And He commanded us to live in the land. So how could you come back to Eretz Yisrael and say, it's impossible? We can't. We won't. It's a terrible land. Eretz Ocheles Yoshveya. So the Aveda was not 15 minutes or a half hour. The Aveda was 40 days. The Medrash interprets the word vitiragnu. Tiragnu is an abbreviation, not reikon, of two words. Tartem gnut. Tartem gnus haaretz. You wandered in the land, you looked around, and you saw negativity. And that was the Aveda. So the Kimora says in Brochas Nun Hayom Beis, Ein Maran Riyodam, Ela Mihir Hurei Liboy. People see not only with their eyes, they see with their hearts. They see what they want to see, consciously and subconsciously. People experience what's in their hearts, and they see what they really wish to see. People that have positive attitudes will only see beauty wherever they look. And some will only see negativity wherever they look and whatever they experience. So the Aveda was what they saw, what they experienced. Their impression of the land, that was the Aveda. Tartem gnus haaretz. I once heard a beautiful interpretation of a story that's told in Tomed Daf Lamed Weiss, a story about Alexander the Great, called by Chazal Alexander Mogdon, Alexander of Macedonia, Alexander the Greek, one of the biggest conquerors and warriors in the history of the world. Alexander conquered Europe. He almost conquered Eretz Yisrael, and that's a story told in Masechet Yuma about Shimon HaTzadik. And in Tomed Lamed Beis, Chazal say Alexander called Chachmei Yisrael, and he told them, give me a plan, I want to go to Africa, I want to conquer Africa. Chachmei Yisrael told them, you can't do it, it's impossible. There are mountains and jungles, you'll never get there. And Alexander angrily tells them, I didn't ask you if, I didn't ask you whether, I asked you how, and I want you to advise me, what am I supposed to do to get there? And Chachmei Yisrael give him some eitzes, some advice. You need mules from Libya. Those are the strongest animals. And you need to take along tons and tons of rope. And wherever you go, tie rope, you should find your way back. And you shouldn't get lost in the desert and in the jungles. Africa has some of the biggest deserts, the Sahara, and some of the most dense jungles. So take rope and tie rope wherever you go. And then Chazal tell an amazing story. Alexander comes to a mechuzah de kulanasha, to a vicinity of women. Well, if there are no men, obviously there will be no women either and no children. So probably the pshat is that the women were the leaders. This was a country, this was a vicinity, this was a nation in which women had all the leadership roles. They commanded the army, they were the fighters, they were the leaders. And Alexander makes preparations to fight them and to conquer this country. And the women send a delegation. And they tell Alexander, this is going to be a huge embarrassment for you. You're going to fight us. If we're going to win these battles, you're going to go down in history as the mighty warrior that was vanquished by women. If you're going to win, you're going to kill us. You're going to go down in history as a barbarian that fought a woman. So let's talk. What do you want? Let's negotiate. So they decided to talk. And Alexander is invited to a meal, to a feast. Comes to the meal, sits down in his chair, and he has a big loaf of pure gold. And once again he gets angry. What am I supposed to do with this? Where's my bread? And the woman told him, you eat bread? Well, we don't have any grain in Africa. What we have in Africa is gold. Grain grows in Europe. So what do you do in Africa if you eat bread like all other mortals do? We thought you have teeth of solid steel and you eat gold. Well, Alexander has a different point of view. He says goodbye, and before he leaves, he put up a big gate and a big sign, and he inscribed, Anu Alexander Shati Avina Kol Yamaya, Adi Elifas Eitzem and Ishaya. I, Alexander, was a fool all my life. Until I spoke, and I got to know the women of this land, and they made me smarter. And I'm leaving this land a different person. And on his way home, he suddenly smells a Reach Gan Eden, a scent of paradise. And he follows the scent. And he gets to a huge gate. And Chazal say that's Sharei Gan Eden. He knocks on the door. From the other side of the door, he is asked, who is it? I am Alexander the Great, Alexander the Macedonian. Open the doors. And they say, Alexander the Great, we know nothing about you. This is the home of the righteous. We let in only tzaddikim. So, Mr. Alexander, move on. We don't have any place here for you. Well, Alexander the Great wasn't used to knocking in doors, and the doors won't open. But this is Sharei Gan Eden. Nobody wasn't spoiled about Alexander. And he begs and pleads, give me a souvenir. I should be able to tell back home that I visited Sharei Gan Eden. They opened the door just a little bit, and they put a skull. That's the souvenir, the gift they gave Alexander. Well, not a very beautiful souvenir to bring home, a human skull. Alexander tries to pick up that skull, and it's so heavy he can't pick it up. And he wasn't a weak person. He was a Gibor Chayil. And Alexander asks, what is this? How come I can't pick up the skull? And from the other side of the door, he is told, that is the skull of a person, Shemeis v'chatzit avosoi biyodoi, and his tithes weren't fulfilled. So the Musar Drosha started, b'mechuzah de kulanasha, and it continued next to Sharei Gan Eden. And Alexander ultimately takes that skull and goes back to Europe a humbled and different person. And the question we ask is, how come he felt Reach Gan Eden, he smelled that scent on his way home? He came home exactly the same way he went there. He tied those ropes. So why didn't he feel the scent, Reach Gan Eden, on his way to Africa? And the answer is a very clear one. The Alexander coming back from Africa is a different person than the Alexander going to Africa. Alexander going to Africa was a warrior, a barbarian, a cruel person, and in his mind and in his heart, all he had was Dam ve'esh v'tim le'sashon. People of that nature don't smell Reach Gan Eden. Alexander the humbled, coming back from Africa, was a different person. And at that stage, he was mesugal to experience and smell Reach Gan Eden. It is the same with what you see. You see what's in your heart. There was a German philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche. He was one of the crazy ones. He ended his life in an asylum. That is history. Nietzsche is considered one of the great philosophers, one of the more extreme ones. And he dealt with the eternal questions that all the philosophers dealt with. What is justice? What is tzedek? What is ethical and what is not ethical? And Nietzsche preached, man is a creature like all the other creatures. And man is part of nature. And therefore, the laws of nature apply to human beings as well. What is the most fundamental law of the animal kingdom? Kol da'alim gvar. Lions kill and eat buffaloes, zebras, wildebeest. The bears kill the deers and the moose. The wolves kill the sheep. The fox kill the rabbits. This is a world of predators. The powerful subjugate the weak and the meek. That is the way Nietzsche saw the world. And that is just. Years later, Hitler, Yamach Shemai, and the Nazis, the most cruel and barbarian people in the history of the world. Friedrich Nietzsche was their hero. And they followed his philosophy. Nietzsche was right, at least in his fundamental assumption. Man needs to observe nature and learn from nature. How do I say that? That is what the Heilige Amoire Rabbi Yochanan says in Erev and Kufa with the base. Lehavdel elef alfei avdalis. Ma'idach siv malveini, ma'alfeinu mebehemis oretz ma'oif shomayim techakmeinu. Rabbi Yochanan says, Ile molei loi nitnu Torah. If the Torah wouldn't have been given, hoyinu lemeiden, we would learn tznius mechatul, derech eretz metahanegol, gezel menemala, arayis miyoina. Rabbi Yochanan says, observe nature. Look at animals. Look at birds. We have so much to learn from them. Tznius from the cats, derech eretz from the roosters and the hens. Prisha megezel from the ants. Arayas miyoina. Unbelievable. Two people observed nature. What did the one see and what did the other see? Nietzsche observed nature. What he saw is blood and cruelty and power. Lahavdel Rabbi Yochanan observed nature. What he saw was beauty and midas tovos and compassion. They looked at the same world, at the same system, but each of them saw something so different. That was the chet of the Meraglim. Not why did you say, but rather how did you see. And many times when I speak about Lashon Hara, I say, the Yisrael of Lashon Hara doesn't start in your mouth. The Yisrael of Lashon Hara starts in your heart, in your mind, in your attitude, by the way you see other people. So from this parsha we need to learn. Always see the beauty of Eretz Yisrael. all you see the beauty of Klal Yisrael, of Bnei Yisrael. Like the famous tefillah of the Heilige Rebbe Melech Melezhensk. Tein b'libeinu, shenira kol echad es malos chavereinu v'lo chisronam. A wise man once said, by what a person says about others, you could learn more about the person saying than about the others he is speaking about. So when people are negative, they see negativity. Positive people see positivity. Positive people will always see Malois Chavereinu Velo Chisrona. And that is a very important and fundamental lesson we learn from the Parshas Amaraglim. שנזכה לראות בטובה של ארץ ישראל ובטובה של בני ישראל, and we should be זוכה בקורא בימינו to Yeshua Seilamim, ביאס גואל צדק במהירו וימינו.